All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. Town Hall session begins right about now. IEBC is targeting 6.1 million voters to be registered. The registration has just kicked off. But joining me now is Professor Abdi Guliye, is the IEBC Commissioner, to tell us what the plan is. You can send in your questions at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We apologize, we cannot use WhatsApp for now because it's still down, but you can send in your tweets. I see some of them already. We'll pose the questions to Professor, who's joining us live from Nakuru. Professor, thank you so much for making time for us. So, how would you assess day one of registration? We've been saying that there was a low turnout of people who wanted to be registered as voters. What is your assessment? Are the numbers in?
Thank you for having me, Trevor. And today was the launch day across the different counties in the country, and we expect a slow start. We are not having numbers as yet, but we do expect a slow start. Hopefully in the course of the week, the momentum will pick.
But what was your target, Professor Guliye? Because you must have had a target for daily registration.
We do not have a target for daily registration. We have targets for county registrations. And depending on the turn-up, then we will be able to compute the daily registrations.
But what is your plan right now? How do you intend to reach the maximum number of people?
The plan is to, of course, the launch today is part of the plan of trying to sensitize Kenyans on the need for them to register. And in addition to the national launch, which happened today in Nakuru, we have engagements with stakeholders across the country at different platforms, both on social media and other medias, and this is trying to bring the fact that the registration has now begun, and request Kenyans to come forward and get registered.
So earlier on, Chairman had said that there were 3 BVR kits in each ward. Is that enough in your assessment?
This is an enhanced continuous voter registration, and it's not a mass voter registration. In the past, we have had mass voter registration, meaning we used to have a kit in every registration center, but due to challenges of budget, we have resorted to an enhanced continuous voter registration, what we are calling ECVR, and this therefore means that we will have 3 kits that will be roaming within the 1,450 wards in this country, and the kits are on a defined route which is shared with stakeholders.
But isn't that a problem right there? Because if you say it's a defined routes and there are places that have network challenges.
For now, there are no issues of network. We are not transmitting real-time the recruitment of new voters, and therefore we have no need for a network at the moment on the routes. We are using data carriers like SIM cards to flash disks and external connections, and those are the things that will be transmitted to the constituency offices, and then it will be uploaded into our systems.
There was a question from one of the viewers that can one use the Auduma number to register?
No, we are not using Auduma numbers to register Kenyans. The documents required for registration is defined in law, and that is the national identity card and a recent or a current passport or a valid passport. So those are the 2 documents recognized in law for purposes of voter registration.
But this is not really in your department, but we do know that in the northern Kenya, there are some young people who've been complaining of not receiving their IDs. Can they then register with their waiting card?
We are not allowing waiting cards, registrations with waiting cards. We require the actual ID for purposes of registration, and this is why we've been in touch with our colleagues within the relevant institutions or departments to expedite the process of issuance of national IDs so that Kenyans can take advantage of this exercise.
What is the plan for diaspora registration?
We intend to do diaspora registration sometime in December. Of course, again, this is subject to availability of funding, but our plan is that we do it in December.
Okay. And there's a question here from George Mike Agutu, who's saying, I'm asking if it's possible to change one's voting station from one polling station to another due to relocation reasons. Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible to do, we call it voter transfer. It's possible to do voter transfer, but at the moment we are only undertaking that exercise at the constituency returning officers' offices or the constituency coordinators' offices. So they can visit the constituency where they want to transfer to and get their votes transferred. For now, our focus is to try and mop up Kenyans that have received identity cards in the last 3-4 years, and we are giving them a priority. That is what we are doing currently.
What is your estimated number of the new voters? Is it 6.1 or 7.1?
Our estimates is 6.1. I mean, 6.5 is what we are estimating to have. Of course, out of the 6.5, nearly 180,000 plus, we have captured them through the continuous voter registration in the last 3 years. And therefore, ideally, what we are looking for is about 6.3. And of course, because we have that target, in this exercise, we have decided to raise the figure a little bit higher so that at least even if we miss the targeted raised figure, we can at least come close to the target that we have. So 7.2 is what we are targeting in general, but specifically we'll be comfortable with 6.3, 6.4.
At what point will the cleaning of the register begin then?
The process of cleaning the register, it's supposed to be done. Usually we do it after the ECVR. We do the data uploading, we do deduplication. All this process, once it is complete, then we do an audit of the register 6 months to the election. And after audit, then 3 months to the election, we do verification. So that is the process.
David Ngure Nganga says IEBC must be realistic with this exercise. How can they register more voters with less allocated funds? Let's be practical. Are you confident of pulling this off despite the budget shortfall, Professor? Well,
we live in this country. We know the challenges we have as a country. There are a lot of competing needs and interests. We will do with what we have been allocated so far, and we are still in touch with relevant institutions, and we do hope that at a later date we will have another opportunity to mop up whatever that is not picked up in this exercise. But for the time being, we want Kenyans to take advantage of the exercise and don't wait for the last minute. 30 days is long enough for as many Kenyans as possible to be registered.
Prof, what are some of the areas you think you will cut down on budget so that you fit within what has been allocated?
As I mentioned earlier, due to the budget shortfalls, we had to avoid the issue of doing registrations at the center level. And that is what traditionally Kenyans were used to, and we used to call it mass voter registration. And because of the budget shortfalls, we had to reduce from a kit per center to registration center to 3 kits per award. And so those are the implications of the budget.
So you mentioned that the 3 kits per ward will be roaming. They will not be stationary?
They will not be stationary. There will be defined route maps which will be shared with all stakeholders. and they would be moving from one location to another on defined days and following defined routes. And maybe I need to mention that whereas this is 3 kits are roaming within the ward, we do have 2 kits that are on standby in the event there will be any issues in the ward or with any of the kits. And we also have 1 other kit at the constituency level, which will also be used for registration purposes at the constituency offices. So there will be additional backup kits.
So you're saying now that whoever wants to be registered can either do it where the roaming kits are or go to the constituency office?
They can go to the constituency office. There is a kit that is supposed to be there to register voters who may go there. But we would advise that they take advantage of the roaming kits within the wards, following the defined routes and the days allocated in different places.
Evelyn Amunga says persons with disability constitute 2.2% of Kenyan population. What measures have you put in place to ensure that the voter registration is disability friendly and inclusive?
We are in touch with disability organizations and representatives. At the moment, the registration is such that they will have to be assisted by the clerks. And at the moment, I think the exercise that has commenced largely will be dependent on support from the registration clerks. And if there are any specialized needs, the returning officers or the constituency election coordinators will step in to support such needs.
A viewer here who's calling himself or herself Kenya Moja says, ask the commissioner why IEBC hasn't considered liaising with the Interior Ministry and other government agencies to import voter information instead of spending billions of hard-to-find funds to come up with a parallel database of users and their biometrics. Why can't you just merge this?
The current law says that voters have to be registered in person, and the method of registration is defined. They have to present themselves, they have to present the relevant documents, and their fingerprints have to be taken. And so this is the current law. If the law is changed to allow for importation of data, then at that point we will implement whatever directive that will be provided.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing that Kipkemoi Ngeno is wondering. Ask him why IDs are not automatically given with voters' cards. Is that a possibility?
Well, when IDs are issued, as a commission, we do not get the database of the ID of the person that is being issued with the IDs, and for this reason, we need to capture the biometric details of the voters, and it is for this reason that we require them to present themselves so that we can capture this in our databases for purposes of identification during voting.
But don't you agree, though, Professor, that it would be more efficient if the different ministries are just coordinated so that you don't have to repeat doing this? Because even when you go and look for an ID, they still take your biometrics.
Well, the biometric that is taken at the ID, you remember, is where they paint some black stuff on your fingers and put on paper. We take our ID, our biometrics digitally and through scanning. So I am not sure whether there is compatibility of the two systems. But again, as I said before, if the law is made in such a manner that there will be cross-importation of data, the Commission has no problem, but there has to be a legal backup.
All right. Professor, stay with me one moment. I'm taking a quick break here. When we come back, we'll run a few of the questions that are still coming from our audience and then call it a night, all right? See you in a bit. All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. Professor Abdi Guliye is still with me. He's joining us live from Nakuru, where they launched the voter registration happening, and there's a lot of questions coming through. Let's bring them up on your screen and see if we can answer as many of them as possible. Let's get the first one up. Professor, this Kukoma Ben says also, Would IEBC consider extension of their timelines if the ambitious target of close to 7 million voters is not achieved on time?
This timeline is based on available budget, and therefore, unless there will be extra budget availed, the timeline for now is 30 days, and we urge Kenyans to take advantage of the exercise.
Okay, let's bring up another question here coming through. Wilson Wanjau says, how does IEBC launch voter registration without the following issues being addressed? Number one, the voter register hasn't been cleaned. If so, Kenyans need proof. And number two, Kenyans are registered into political parties without their consent. Has this issue been resolved?
The second question, we have no involvement in it. Kenyans, however, they get registered into political parties. We, as an IEBC, we are not involved. In terms of cleaning the register, there is a process for cleaning the register. And IEBC is not custodian of the list of dead people. There are institutions mandated to collect that data, and annually we get reports from those institutions, and we act on the basis of those institutions to update our register, and we have been doing that annually, and so we have no much issue in as far as trying to deal with any data of deceased voters are concerned and remove them from the register.
George Okidi says, can the IEBC explain the recruitment of its registration personnel, because many applicants never heard of any interviews done for those recruited?
The recruitment procedure was web-based. People apply through our web portal, and thereafter the applicants were transferred, the names of the applicants and their application details were sent to the respective counties where they applied. And it is not true. Respective counties conducted shortlistings and interviews for based on the documentation received, and as a result of that, the counties did recruitments.
James Brigham says most of the registered voters don't have their voting cards now. They got lost. Will they be issued with the new ones, or will they be allowed to vote without those cards? Will there be another registration process next, and most 2022 KCC candidates will be locked out of voting?
Once you register as a voter, you don't need any card. You only need your fingerprints to be identified. The only thing you need to come as you approach the polling stations is to come with your whatever document you use to register, either an ID or a valid passport. And thereafter, your fingerprints is what will allow you to vote. So there is no specific card that is issued once you register, although we do have an acknowledgement slip to say that you have been registered. Unfortunately, if this exercise lapses, and if there will be no further availability of funding, then the Commission will not be in a position to mount any other exercise after these 30 days. So if there are any Kenyans who will receive their national identifications, then it will be unfortunate that the Commission will not be able to include them in the list of a register of voters.
Professor, you're saying so without funding, this is it? I mean, the end of the 30 days, if you're not registered, that will be it, if there's no funding that comes through?
Yes, that is the message we want to pass to Kenyans.
Okay. Biko Obimbo says if one wants to shift polling stations with the same ward or to another ward within the same constituency, can they do it during this period?
As I mentioned earlier, yes, they can do it. Voter transferring can be done, but at the constituency level. So they have to go and visit the returning officer in charge of that constituency, and that is where they will have their transfer done.
Okay, Grace Toroitich says, for example, I lost my ID card and I haven't gotten another one yet. Can I just register using the form from maybe the chief's office showing that my ID card got lost?
No, we need a valid ID to register anyone as a voter.
Okay. Agan Dranoil says, are you sure that the few roaming registration kits will hit the targets per ward? Are you not going to strain the registration officers? Will the process be reliable?
The process is reliable. We have asked our field staff who are in charge of the exercise at the ward level to ensure that the routes created are routes where they will be able to capture as many people as possible. And therefore, we believe that we will be able to register as many Kenyans as possible with the time that we have been able to undertake the exercise.
So Mukindia Ireri says, ask Professor if those who lost their cards, if they can re-register. I think you've answered that already. Rono Kibet says, what of those who are unable to travel to their respective ward? Can they be allowed to register where they are? So for example, if you're in this ward, yes, but you want to be registered in a different one.
Yeah, and we do have kits at the Auduma Center. And so I would advise such persons to visit the nearest Auduma Center. We have almost 52 kits in different Auduma centers in different counties, so they could as well visit there.
But J.K. Tanin is wondering, Professor, that if you want to change your voting station from, say, Nairobi to Wajir, do you have to travel to Wajir to change, or you can change it from here?
I would advise, if you're in Nairobi, go to GP or Auduma Center.
And you can change your positions to Wajir if that's where you want to vote from?
Yes.
Okay. Kwaben says most youths are ready, but most will be hindered by the time to register as voters. Those at work leave from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. How will IEBC cater for those who leave work after 5 p.m.?
We work up to Sunday, up to weekends. So I don't believe that they are working from Monday to Sunday and every day of the week.
Okay. There's another question here that came, Okelo Mwalimu. Let's bring that up. He says, elections and electoral processes are widely driven by perception. Ask the good professor, what has the commission done to correct its reputation following the nullification of the 2017 presidential elections?
We are doing registration at this stage, and the register is the backbone of any election, and therefore we are trying to perfect the process of trying to have a clean register, and this is part of that exercise. After the registration is complete, we will do, as I mentioned earlier, we will do the deduplication if there are any duplications. Thereafter, then we will subject the register to an audit, of course, undertaken by a reputable external firm. And thereafter, Kenyans will verify their details, will have an opportunity to verify their details before the elections.
Emily Njoki is wondering, why is registration in Kiambaa County, I think she meant Kiambu County, not happening?
It is day one, and we expect some challenges here and there, but let's talk about it tomorrow.
Okay. And Kagwi think tank still says that how can we have confidence in the IEBC while they're the ones who bungled the elections?
That is history. Lessons were learned. The Commission has been perfecting its systems for the last 3 years. So let's not dwell on the past. This is a Commission that has taken measures to make sure that we correct whatever lapses that were there, and we look forward to a great election come next year.
Engineer Lazaro is wondering, is it right for politicians who double as competitors to lead in mobilizing people for voter registration exercise? Are you concerned as IEBC?
The kits are going to have defined routes. It will not be based on strongholds of anyone. So at this stage, we urge anyone who has interest in the electoral process to come out and mobilize Kenyans to come and register.
All right. Are you considering stopping some politicians from running should you get a go-ahead from other institutions?
Stopping politicians from running is defined in the elections laws. We can only stop you from running if you have been convicted for a period of 6 months, a minimum of 6 months. If you are not convicted, then we cannot stop you from running as per the current laws, regardless of which institutions brings us their stories.
All right. Bernard Kiprop says, isn't voter registration a continuous process? Should I not be able to still register after this exercise?
Yes, you can register even after the exercise, but as long as you will visit the constituency elections coordinator, which is the person in charge of the constituency. So if you go to our office, even after the 30-day lapses, you'll still get registered until 6 months to the election when we stop the process.
Lawrence says, during general election, most officials don't vote because they are posted in the station where they are not registered. How can this be resolved in future?
It's a challenge that we have observed, and because when we recruit staff, we normally deploy them to areas outside their voting areas. And if this is the case, then it becomes challenging for us to release such staff to go to distant places to vote. But where the voting locations are within the vicinity of where they are deployed, we can always allow them to vote in turns, which means one person goes, the other officials man the station as he comes back, and then we release the others. But this is only if it is in the vicinity of where they are deployed.
Wanaoni Michael says, my details have never been found on the kit during voting. How can I take part in the next election?
I wish you could visit, we could advise him or her to visit the nearest constituency returning officer to find out what has happened if he has registered and his details are missing. It's a very rare occasion.
Okay. Osmiam Oyua says, why don't you just create a USSD or an app where people can register online?
For us to do that, we need to have the legal backup. And so without that, the current legal in place is such that people have to come physically, get their biometric details taken or uploaded into our system to enable us to identify them on the voting day. So if there will be change in the law to enable us to virtually and register voters, we will adjust our systems accordingly.
Okay. Charles from Bunge la Wazalendo says, let IEBC bring back the voter's identity card. It gives voters confidence to avoid the black book problems.
We don't have any black book or green book or any book. We only have one register these days. And so it is not necessary. The card is not what you need to vote. Apart from the identity card that or the passport that will identify you, it is your fingerprints that will say whether you will vote or not.
Samuel Orutwa is bringing in a very interesting aspect. He's saying, why should I fail to vote because I'm away from my registered center during voting day, and yet where online I can vote from anywhere?
We do not have online voting. And that is why even when we do diaspora voting, we have to do diaspora registration through taking their fingerprints, and then we physically have to have them cast their votes for us to count and send the results. So we are not yet on online voting.
No. Samuel here means if it is an amalgamated system, if I am registered as a voter, if I put my biometrics, it should be able to pick and say, Trevor Mbija voted in Nairobi. It doesn't have to be that I have to be in the ward where I was registered. That's what it's trying to say, because it's an entire database.
Yeah, it's an entire database, but the person, once you are registered, you are locked to a ward where you are supposed to be.
So if you're unable to go there, you can't vote?
You are in fact locked to a polling station, not even a ward. So if you can't even vote in a polling station nearby.
Okay. There's still a lot of questions here, but I've seen you've tried to answer most of them. Haji Warsame says, is recruitment done by IEBC free and fair?
At this stage, everyone is mobilizing to have their supporters registered as voters. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the routes are defined and it's open to everybody. We have no intention of locking anybody out during this exercise, and it is our conviction as a commission that the process is free and fair.
William Okech says, can we confirm our voter registration status online instead of unnecessarily traveling?
Once we do verification, once we do registration, and during verification, you can actually do an SMS code to check your details.
Okay. How do you send the SMS code?
The number will be provided.
Okay. Let's see. Ben Olekitum says, are we ready to open the servers this time?
The servers are open long time ago, and we have no intentions of having the issues of servers. I think in 2022, the elections will be more transparent, and there will be no need for such issues.
So you're saying the servers are here this time, they're not in a different country?
No, we have no intentions to have servers outside our jurisdiction.
All right. Prof, finally, what is your message to Kenyans as we wind up on this discussion, because we're running out of time here, in terms of the registration?
Yeah, mine is to appeal to Kenyans, particularly the youth who have obtained the national ID cards in the last 3 years, 3.5, 4 years, to come out and take advantage of this opportunity to have them registered so that they can participate in electing leadership for this country. It's not just enough to complain about the bad leaders that we have. If you are not taking any steps to correct the problem that you think there is in this country of bad leadership, if you don't take your ID card, you register as a voter and come out to vote for a leader whom you think is good enough, then Kenyans should not be complaining if the leadership is elected for them by others. So I think there is an opportunity the Commission has given Kenyans. We invite them to take advantage of it. Let us not rush at the 11th hour. We have 30 days. I know people normally say there is a lot of time, and then suddenly on the 25th, 26th, 27th day, we start getting long queues, and I think we can avoid this if we can take advantage of the time that we have and do not wait for the last minute and rush to register.
All right. Thanks, Prof. Professor Abdi Guliye, there is a commissioner with IEBC on day one of the voter registration. He says this will go on for the next 30 days, joining us live from Nakuru. And thank you all for all the feedback and all the questions you sent through. We'll keep an eye on this over the next 30 days and keep you updated as well. He says if they don't get any extra funding, this will be it. So this is your moment to go and register, right? My name is Trevor Mbija. It's always a pleasure having you with us. Have a great night ahead. Bye for now and keep it citizen.